Indianapolis Motor Speedway, proving ground of progress for the automobile of tomorrow. May 30th, 1946, and 185,000 spectators from far and near gather to witness a thrilling contest featuring the skill of daring drivers, the genius of engineers and designers, and the teamwork of the crews in the pit. The 30th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. To some, a Roman holiday of thrills and chills. To those who know, another outstanding chapter in the history of an event which has contributed so much to the development of the modern automobile. You will find in every modern automobile abundant evidence of the improvements and new designs which were developed and tested in this crucible of speed. High compression engines, balloon tires, high octane fuel, four-wheel brakes, independent wheel suspension, even the rear view mirror. Such vital developments as these came straight from the 500-mile race to your car. In a garage at the very heart of the Speedway infield is a man known to every Indianapolis driver. He is Firestone's Johnny Moore. They depend on him for the tires that safeguard their lives during the 500-mile grind.
Where's Johnny? Hi, Johnny. How's everything?
Fine, Carl. I'm glad to see you. What brings you down from the press stand?
Well, the Times Syndicate wants me to do a series of articles on the history of the race. I need help. They want me to write up the automotive advancements that have developed on the Speedway.
Well, you've come to the right place. There's two men over there that can help you a lot. The one on the right's the new president of the Speedway.
Wilbur Shaw. I recognize him. Who's the other one?
Ray Harroun.
The first Indianapolis winner?
That's right. Come on, I'll introduce you to them. Wilbur, I want you to meet Carl Reed of the Times Syndicate. He's an old friend of mine.
It's a pleasure, Mr. Reed.
How are you, Mr. Shaw?
Fine, thank you.
Carl's writing a series of stories on the history of the race, and he's looking for some information.
If it's history you're interested in, here's a gentleman you should meet. Mr. Ray Harroun, winner of the first 500-mile race in 1911.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do? I'll be glad to help you, Mr. Reed. But remember, I go back 35 years. I'm really an old-timer.
So much the better. You know, lots of people have the idea that the Indianapolis race is nothing more than a sporting event. I'd like to tell them how much the race has contributed to the automotive industry.
It should be a great story and well worth telling.
The car in which he won the first 500-mile race is just outside, and it has a gadget on I'm sure you'd be interested in seeing. It fits right in, doesn't it, Ray?
Sure it does.
Well, let's go see it.
Don't expect to see anything very glamorous.
She was a beautiful automobile in her day.
It's still beautiful to me. Well, there she is.
Winner, 1911. The Marmon Wasp.
And it took a lot of courage to drive this baby.
This car is historic for several reasons, Mr. Reed. We designed this car to carry one man. I figured I could save weight and get more speed by riding alone. The job of the mechanic in those days was to watch behind and notify the driver when other cars were trying to pass. They claimed that it'd be dangerous for me to ride alone, so I rigged up this little gadget.
This, Mr. Reed, is the first rear vision mirror. It must have been a great race, Ray. I'd like to have seen it.
It was a great race, Wilbur, and I don't think anybody that saw it will ever forget it.
40 speed kings of two continents lined up on the new brick track on the morning of May 30th, 1911 for the first running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race, once around the track in formation at 60 miles an hour. Then the battle began as they crossed the starting line. Johnny Aiken and his number 4 National took the lead for about 3 laps, and the boys began to get into trouble as the fast pace caused minor accidents and delays. Spencer Wishart in the Mercedes number 11 took over the lead until the 12th lap. And then David Bruce Brown's number 28 Fiat went out in front to lead almost every lap up to the halfway mark. At 80 laps, Ray Harroun in number 32 was still holding third place, behind Bruce Brown and Ralph DePalma. 87th lap, Joe Jagersberger came down the straightaway in his case, number 8. His steering gear broke, and his mechanic fell out onto the track. To avoid hitting the mechanic, Harry Knight threw his Wesker into a skid and crashed into car number 35 in the pits. Knight's car then turned a loop in the air and landed on Eddie Hearn's Fiat number 18. All 4 of the cars involved were out of business for the rest of the race. Because of slow pit work, Bruce Brown lost the lead, and Harroun went out in front at 250 miles, with Ralph Mulford pushing hard in second position. At the end of 6 hours and 42 minutes, Harroun was mighty glad to be coming down the straightaway with a checkered flag. His average for the 500 miles was just under 75 miles an hour.
75 miles an hour isn't very fast today, but it seemed plenty fast to me back in 1911.
No matter how fast you go, that's the longest 500 miles on Earth.
You ought to know.
As a third-time winner, Mr. Shaw, I'd say you qualified as an expert. It must have been a tough grind.
It's still a tough grind, no question.
Hello, Ralph.
Hello, Johnny.
Here's another Indianapolis veteran you don't want to miss. The only man who ever tried to win by pushing his car across the finish line.
That would be
Wilbur?
Ralph De Palma.
Ralph, it's nice to see you.
Glad to see you indeed.
Hello, Ralph.
Well, Ray, what a pleasure.
Carl Reed, Ralph De Palma.
Well, Mr. Reed, how are you?
How do you do, Mr. De Palma?
Ralph,
Fine.
tell him about your glorious failure of 1912, will you?
Glorious failure. Well, Mr. Reed, 22 and a half. About 1.5 laps from the finish. The car broke down at the north end turn. That's at the end of the stretch at Indianapolis. I blew a connecting rod. I had one idea in mind. That was to win the race. My mechanic and myself got out and pushed the car to the tape. But they don't pay off on that. The car must cross the line under its own power.
Ralph didn't always have tough luck. During 27 years of racing, he won plenty of races.
It takes more than luck to win a race.
Righto.
Thank you, Carl.
Carl is doing a series of articles on automotive advancements that have been developed here in the race. Do you remember anything special, Ralph, that was developed in the 1913 race?
Yes, that was the year Teddy Tetzlaff came here with an Asada Froschini with 4-wheel brakes, the first one seen in this country.
You won the 1915 race, didn't you, Mr. De Palma?
Yes, I did. Just barely got across the line with a broken piston.
I remember that finish. Dario Resta was right behind you, and believe me, we had our fingers crossed.
The track closed down during the First War, didn't it?
Yes, they made a flying field out of it. They started racing again in 1919 and called it the Liberty Sweepstakes. For the first time, we had multi-cylinder racing engines. The French Ballot cars had straight-8 engines, and you had a twin six-packer, didn't you, Ralph? You know, Carl, in the early days, the greatest problem around the speedway was tires. Blowouts and tire changes caused more delays than mechanical failures. It was about this time that Harvey S. Firestone became interested in the race.
Yes, he told our engineers if they could build a tire to withstand the torture of 500 miles on the speedway, they would be building the safest tire for the family car that we had ever seen. He knew that 500 miles on the speedway is equal to 50,000 miles on the highway. Our development department went to work on the assignment, and in 1920, Gaston Chevrolet won the race on Firestone tires.
And Chevrolet won without a tire change the first time on the speedway.
Mr. Firestone's judgment was well rewarded, and from that time on, every race at Indianapolis has been won on Firestone tires.
Passenger car tires increased in safety and mileage as a direct result. As a matter of fact, a lot of automotive advancements developed out of the 1920 race. The first American car with 4-wheel brakes and a straight-8 engine appeared on the track. And the 1920 race also featured the first high-efficiency battery ignition.
Wilbur knows his stuff, Carl.
It comes naturally. I was raised here in Indianapolis, and my one ambition was to be a racing driver. I practically haunted this place around here until I was large enough to sit behind the steering wheel.
What's the next big development?
Oh, I believe the supercharger was. Wouldn't you say so, Wilbur?
Oh, I think so, too. A Duesenberg car with a centrifugal supercharger won the 1924 race. That made possible the turbo supercharger of today.
And it also made possible the performance of our big bombers and fighter planes in World War II. 1924 was the first year that ethyl gasoline was used in the Indianapolis race. That was an important development.
Speaking of contributions, how about Pete DePaulo's win in 1925? Remember Wilbur? He was the first driver to average over 100 miles an hour. You can give Balloon Tires credit for that, Mr. Reed.
The tires were designed, developed, and built by Firestone. It's one of the best examples I know of a product that was proved on the Speedway.
Balloon tires certainly made a big difference in passenger cars.
All the difference in the world. They meant entirely new standards of speed and safety.
I can remember how they used to demonstrate balloon tires. You know, with high-pressure tires, riding on rough roads was pretty rugged. Every bump was tough on the car and tougher still on the rider. Yet with balloon tires, the difference was, well, the difference between day and night. The bumps were ironed out and passengers rode in real comfort. I'd almost forgotten about the old high-pressure tire.
I don't suppose many people realize that the balloon tires were first used in the 1925 Indianapolis race.
You're right, Wilbur. Front-wheel drive cars were also raced for the first time in 1925. That's the year I introduced the drop center rims.
1925. Important year in my story, I'd say.
In the 1930 race, hydraulic shock absorbers came into general use. They were adopted for the family automobiles immediately.
Even more important, the rules barred superchargers. That meant racing engineers had to redesign engines to increase horsepower and speed. It was the start of our modern high-compression engine.
1934 brought out the first racing car with four-wheel drive.
There was another important development in 1934. The rules limited each car to 45 gallons of gasoline, and engines had to be redesigned for economy. Bill Cummins won the race that year. I think he had about 3 gallons of gasoline left in the tank. Here again, the things we tested at the Speedway were used in the passenger cars the public bought in the years that followed.
They kept lowering the gasoline allowance every year after that, didn't they? For a while, anyway.
Yes, they got down to 37.5 gallons in 1936. They were trying to hold down the speed of the cars and at the same time encourage design for greater fuel economy. But each year, the designers and the drivers outguessed the experts, and the speeds went up and up.
You won the race in 1937, 39, and 40, didn't you, Mr. Shaw?
Yes, in the 1939 race, I used a new type of lightweight alloy rim. And in 1940, Firestone added an important improvement by building a wide base rim. That meant greater stability for the car, more positive steering control, and greater safety on the curves. The Firestone wide base rim was adopted by passenger car manufacturers the next year, wasn't it, Johnny?
That's right, Wilbur. And 1941 started off with plenty of excitement, too. We had a fire in the garage area on the morning of the race.
Quite a few cars were lost. It was bad luck all the way around.
You grabbed off most of the tough luck in that race, Wilbur.
Well, more than my share.
He was way out in front near the end of the race, only to have a rear hub break. If it hadn't been for that, he'd probably be the only four-time winner in the history of the Speedway.
After they picked me off the wall, Maury Rose went on to win driving relief for Floyd Davis. I think the most remarkable thing about the 1941 race was the fact that Cliff Bergier ran the entire 500 miles, finished in 5th place, and didn't make a single pit stop. That was the first time it ever happened in the history of the Speedway.
Anything else on 1941?
How about it, boys? Offhand, that's all I can think of.
And that's the last race before the war. Yep, this ought to make pretty good reading. My syndicate wanted a story on the real value of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. This material ought to do it.
Yes, Mr. Reed, the Great Indianapolis race has contributed much to this nation. Ideas born on the Speedway helped to produce the modern automobile and many other important devices. Indianapolis racing experience paid rich dividends when the armed forces insisted that every manufacturer of aircraft tires adopt Firestone's Speedway-proved tire construction. Every type of combat vehicle demanded the strongest possible tires to withstand the terrific strain of war service. And here again, the experience gained by Firestone at Indianapolis proved to be vitally important. In the research laboratories of the rubber industry, as in every other developmental facility of the nation, new materials and new processes were rushed to fill the needs of the armed forces. The entire Firestone organization placed its resources of experience, manpower, and technical equipment behind the government program for the development of synthetic rubber, carrying out a project which Harvey S. Firestone had urged upon the nation years earlier in prospect of just such a dire emergency. From intensive research emerged not only a satisfactory substitute for natural rubber, but also synthetics which were definitely superior to natural rubber in many uses. And in wartime, the Indianapolis Speedway played a vital role in the development of better tires. When tire conservation was a vital necessity, the government had enforced a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit throughout the country in order to save rubber. But realizing that this control must one day be lifted, automobile manufacturers, as well as the government, were wondering whether the synthetic tires would be safe at faster highway speeds. Laboratory tests said yes, but the final test is road driving. And so the government authorized the use of gasoline and tires to find out just how safe synthetic tires were at higher speeds. In 1944, Wilbur Shaw made a tremendously important run before the empty stands at Indianapolis. Stock Firestone Deluxe Champion synthetic tires were placed on the wheels of a racing car. Under the supervision of the American Automobile Association, Shaw began a 500-mile race against time. These standard Firestone passenger car tires stood up to the test as the car roared around the turns on the rough emery-like surface of the speedway. The tires were subjected to almost unbelievable stresses. The terrific centrifugal force on the curves tried to tear the tires from the wheels. They held firmly, grinding against the abrasive surface of the track. Racing speeds were maintained on the straightaway and on the turns without a single tire failure. For 500 miles, Wilbur Shaw raced around the great speedway, and he crossed the line with an official average speed of better than 100 miles an hour. This was the grueling test of the speedway, clearly demonstrating that Firestone synthetic rubber tires are safe at high speed. And remember, 500 miles on the speedway are the equal of 50,000 miles on the highway. After 4 years of war, the great 2.5-mile track again echoes to the sound of roaring engines. The smell of hot oil hangs heavy over the pits and the garages, where drivers and mechanics put the finishing touches on their shining mounts. On the test stands, wheels are aligned and balanced. Vital parts are magnafluxed to reveal hidden dangers. In the Firestone garage, tires and tubes are carefully inspected, mounted, and inflated under the watchful eye of Firestone racing engineers. That tall chap with a mustache is Cliff Bergier, who's driven more miles in competition at Indianapolis than any other man.
Say, Johnny, I think I better have one more 750-20 mounted up, even if I don't expect to use it.
Okay, Cliff, we'll mount it up and just charge it to your account.
When drivers like Cliff Bergier buy Firestone tires to use in a 500-mile race, they know that they are buying the best kind of safety insurance. Also important are the critical tests which cars and drivers are required to pass before the contest board officials will allow them to compete. Despite the fact that this Maserati carried Wilbur Shaw to 2 Indianapolis victories, it must be weighed, measured, and inspected before Ted Horn can drive it in the 1946 race. With the seal of official approval attached, the car is ready to attempt a qualifying run, which may earn it a place in the starting lineup. 4 laps to go, 10 miles against the clock to earn the right to start the big race. Anxious to place well up among the starters, Ted Horn keeps the throttle down as he roars along the straightaway and into the turn. The white flag means 3 laps completed and 1 to go. 2.5 miles in less than 1.25 minutes, and the checkered flag drops as Horn finishes the qualifying run with an average speed of 1:23.980, earning him pole position in the third row. His speed of nearly 124 miles per hour puts Horn in fairly good position to compete for lap prizes as well as the big money at the end of the race. A careful check of tire temperatures and wear is made for the record. Car number 24, which won the 1941 Indianapolis race, is to be driven by Joey Chitwood, a colorful dirt track driver. Joey is a full-blooded American Indian. Chitwood makes his qualifying run at just under 120 miles per hour. Mel Hansen is to be the pilot of car number 41, a new job with an aircraft-type chassis and a 4-cylinder Offenhauser engine. Hansen qualifies his car as an average of 121 miles per hour. Luigi Villoresi, celebrated Italian race driver, is number 1 man on a team of Maseratis entered by a sportsman from Milan. He is to drive a brand new car of a type which has already scored 2 victories at Indianapolis. Villoresi's qualifying average for the 10-mile run is just under 122 miles per hour. A very fast car is number 1, which is to be driven by one of America's greatest race drivers, Rex Mays. Second in the 1941 race, Mays has a good chance to win the 1946 as he qualifies at nearly 129 miles per hour. And now it's race day again. For this first post-war running of the 500-mile race, Wilbur Shaw, the new president of the Speedway, has arranged a stirring pageant of America's progress in motor car design and engineering. First in line is a car half a century old, the 1896 Roberts Electric. Harvey S. Firestone, Jr. pilots the old-timer as it leads the parade. The 1900 Oldsmobile, driven by Ab Jenkins, holder of many world speed records, and the 1904 White Steamer represent 2 phases of the development of the American automobile. Next in line is the famous race car owner and driver Harry Hartz at the wheel of an early Studebaker. Typical of early 20th century American motor cars is this 1908 2-cylinder Buick. Most of the cars in this pageant are owned by ardent collectors like James Melton, seen here driving his 1910 Oldsmobile Limited with its double-deck running boards and huge tires. Firestone tires on the wheels of all these pioneer cars symbolize Firestone's long record of leadership and progress. First to produce the commercial demountable rim. First to use the rubber non-skid tread. First to employ the gum dipping process. First to introduce the balloon tire. The names of 2 more automotive pioneers are represented in the parade by this venerable Model T Ford, driven by Henry Ford II, and by a 1913 Chevrolet driven by Earl Cooper, national racing champion the year the car was built. On this 1916 Packard Twin 6, driven by Ralph De Palma, is a set of Firestone tires placed on the wheels 22 years ago. Behind the wheel of this 1926 Cole Aero 8 is another immortal of the Speedway, Tommy Milton, twice winner of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. An important step in the development of a famous automobile is seen in the still handsome lines of this 1933 Chrysler. And the last stage of automotive advancement before World War II is represented by this streamlined 1941 Buick. And a post-war automobile, the 1946 Mercury, winds up this parade of automotive progress with 3-time Indianapolis winner Louis Meyer at the wheel. As the pageant of yesterday's automobiles comes to an end, 185,000 spectators in stands and infield turn their eyes toward the pits along the straightaway. Here, 33 shining racing cars are lined up at the inside of the track for last-minute inspection and adjustment. All but a few of these cars are veterans of earlier Indianapolis races, 7 having scored victories in the 500-mile race in past years. 8 of the cars are of Italian origin. The rest are American design. And every car is on Firestone Deluxe Champion tires, even the foreign entries. The greatest compliment that can be paid a tire manufacturer. Paul Russo, in his 3rd appearance as an Indianapolis driver, sits behind the wheel of the Pageant Special, a new car of radical design. Fastest car in the starting lineup is Ralph Hepburn's number 2, which set a new record with a qualifying lap at more than 134 miles per hour. Car number 1, which made the 2nd fastest qualifying speed, should be well up among the leaders with Rex Mays in the cockpit. Car number 61, winner of the 1934 race, will be driven by Jimmy Jackson. Car number 45, which Louis Meyer drove to victory in 1936, will be driven in 1946 by Duke Dinsmore. Henry Banks, the successful and popular speed pilot, will be in car number 31. Officials have ordered the cars into starting positions on the straightaway. In less than 20 minutes, 0 hour of the 30th 500-mile race will be at hand. The last few cars are rolled into position, and drivers, mechanics, and officials line up for the official photograph, with the famous Borg-Warner trophy in the place of honor. Henry Ford II steps into the car in which he will set the pace for the start of the race. Then the cars start away from the line for a one-lap tour of the track, led by the pace car at moderate speed, so that each car will be in its correct position when they reach the line for the flying start. And here they come down the straightaway, gaining speed as the formation approaches the starting line. There's the green flag, and they're off to a whirlwind start of a 200-lap contest. The pace car pulls off in a cloud of dust, and 33 drivers step on the gas as they go into the first turn. Paul Russo in the twin-engine number 10 gets there first, but he's soon overtaken by Maury Rose in number 8. Rose leads at the end of the first lap with an average of 120 miles per hour. In the 9th lap, Rex Mays in number 1 takes over the lead for 3 laps, raising the speed a few notches. Ralph Hepburn comes up out of the pack in his powerful number 2 to take first position in lap 12, and he reaches an almost unbelievable straightaway speed of approximately 170 miles per hour. In the 16th lap, Paul Russo crashes head-on. The accident slows down the race as starter Seth Klein waves the yellow caution flag, but Hepburn holds his lead, and soon the speeds go up again. Maury Rose, running in 2nd position in the 40th lap, hits the wall only a few feet from the wreck of Russo's car. Again, the yellow light signals a slowdown for a few laps, and Joey Chitwood decides it's a good time to come in for gas. With the caution light off, Hepburn steps up the speed again until he makes an unexpected pit stop because of failing brakes. Hepburn stays in the pits for 8.5 minutes, while George Robeson, the number 16, moves up from 2nd to 1st position. Jimmy Wilburn in car number 63 comes in for his 4th stop as car after car drops out of the race with a variety of mechanical trouble. With only 19 cars still in the race, Bill Scheffler is back in 17th place, with Joey Chitwood and Louis Durant in 11th and 8th. After taking the lead briefly, Cliff Berger comes in during the 70th lap to get first aid for burns from a broken oil line. Rex Mays, with his own car out of the race, takes over Berger's car. Ted Horn comes in for water and gas as Robeson leads in the 80th lap with Jimmy Jackson, Harry McQuinn, and Rex Mays trailing him in the next 3 places. At the end of the 2nd hour, only 16 cars are left in the race when Harry McQuinn comes in for gas. Robeson continues to hold his lead, driving very steadily. By the end of the 3rd hour, 5 more cars are out, leaving only 11 in the race. All the grandstand experts are now wondering if there will be enough cars to fill the 10 payoff positions at the end of the race. As they near the 500-mile mark, Robeson, Jackson, and Horn are in the first 3 places, with only 9 cars running. 24 cars have been forced out of the race, but not a single one due to tire failure. There's the white flag for number 16, indicating that George Robeson has only 1 lap to go. This is the big moment in the life of any race driver, as the cheering crowd waits for him to come down the straightaway to fame and fortune. And here he comes. And there's the checkered flag for George Robeson, winner of the 30th Indianapolis 500-mile race. And Jimmy Jackson, riding home in second place, is tired and happy and many dollars richer as he comes down to the line for the checkered flag, only 44 seconds behind the winner. After completing 2 extra laps, Robeson pulls into victory lane at the end of the pits, where a crowd of newsmen and celebrities give him a hero's welcome. The person he's most anxious to see is his wife, so proud of George that she doesn't care who knows it. The winner of the great race fully appreciates the years of research and development, the countless hours of labor that precede the hour of success at Indianapolis. And as he receives the congratulations of Harvey S. Firestone, Jr., he thanks his lucky stars for tires that were tough enough to see him safely through to victory. Another Indianapolis race has been written into the annals of racing history. Another top performance has once more demonstrated the safety of Firestone Deluxe Champion tires. Out of Firestone's vast experience at Indianapolis have come the basic tire construction features that make possible a new tire for the motorists of America. The new Firestone Deluxe Champion, a new and better tire for the highway, the safest and longest wearing tire ever built. Its rayon cord body is 55% stronger. Rayon cord is more heat resistant, producing a cooler running tire. Firestone's safety-assured construction welds all of the body plies and the tread together into an inseparable unit of extra strength. These patented features give extra protection against blowouts. There are up to 60% more non-skid angles in the new safety grip tread, which has been especially designed for the rayon body. This provides greater traction, extra protection, skidding and side-slipping, assuring extra safety. There is a larger area of tread in contact with the road, which means slow, even wear. The combination of this new rayon cord body and the new safety grip tread provides up to 32% longer mileage. Here is a tire that is new in design, new in material, and Firestone's leadership and fundamental policy of always giving the best today, still better tomorrow.